Hi, my name is Daniel. I'll be interviewing you tonight for my capstone project. Could we just start off with you introducing yourself? What's your name?
Hi, I'm Alden, and I own Underhill Plants.
And what are your pronouns?
I use he or they pronouns.
And Alden, how would you describe what you do?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, so I own Underhill Plants. I do a lot of different things for the shop. Mostly right now, I am the buyer and kind of the inventory manager and answer lots of weird plant questions. A lot of other small things, but those are the main ones.
What's the weirdest plant question that you've ever received?
Ooh. So people come in all the time and say, this is a really weird question, and it's almost never actually a really weird question because plants are weird. I wish I could think of something that was like genuinely a really weird question, but I think I'm just desensitized now. So, yeah. I think I'm weird enough and plants are weird enough that there aren't any weird plant questions.
How long have you been operating with plants?
Yeah, so I have always uh, I've always kind of been into plants and interested in plants. Um, and it's been a hobby of mine probably my whole life in different iterations. Um, my parents are both biologists, and so I grew up very um, in nature, and then I got really into gardening for a while, and then living in Olympia, I got kind of bored in the winter, and probably around like 2015, 2016, I started getting really into houseplants specifically. And it's all been kind of crazy from there. But I started in 2018 doing pop up markets with just different little bits of plants and I would go to secondhand stores and find weird vessels that I could then like drill a hole in the bottom or whatever, and I'd plant my little propagations and plants into them, and that kind of snowballed and led to deciding to open a physical shop in December of 2019, which was a really interesting time to open a business.
Why was that an interesting time?
Because COVID happened very shortly after that. So I was just kind of building up steam and started right at the holiday season, which is always a crazy time. So had that crazy holiday season, calmed down for like a month and a half, and then in March, um, that's when we started really having more awareness of what was going on, and I think that was when they officially shut down the businesses was in March too. So it was pretty crazy.
What was that like, being a new shop and operating a physical space while the pandemic is going on and we can't, be physically together?
Yeah, it was really difficult. In some ways, I was kind of in a good position, or as good of a position as you can be with that, because I didn't have any employees yet. So it was just me that I was putting in a bad position by being closed. Um, so, and also the hobby really took off in that time because people were stuck at home. So a lot of people started either getting really into the hobby or just felt like they wanted to brighten up or decorate their home, um, because uh, now they have a home office, or now they're spending a lot more time in their home. So in that way, it was good. And I was pretty quickly within like a month or two. I think within a month or so, I was able to switch everything to online, um, with shipping and local pickup available. And it was really informative, and I learned a lot. Um, I especially learned a lot about like the inventory process and about keeping a online inventory, which is not something I was planning or expecting to do. Um, and honestly, the my like Olympia customer base was really awesome and supportive during that time. So I think I was lucky that I was able to get those couple months running start before we shut down. Um, People have been very supportive and kind, uh, with how weird everything's been.
Very weird. Have you always operated it in this space?
No, we originally opened on the corner of 4th and Franklin, next to Wicked Pies across from Dumpster Values. And it was a much smaller space, maybe like 800 square feet of usable space. So it was much more doable for me to operate by myself. Uh, and then we moved over here at the beginning of 2022, and hopefully this will be our forever home location because it's a pretty amazing space. I'm really happy to be here.
When you say it's your forever space, why Olympia? Why downtown Olympia?
Yeah, so I grew up in Olympia, um, and I went away for college, and I definitely had that mentality of like, I'm getting out of this town. I'm not going to be the kind of person who lives where they grew up. And I traveled around and I lived in a couple different places and I did like a study abroad, and I just realized that I really loved Olympia, and coming back and living more in the core of downtown, I just really fell in love with it in a different way. It's a really unique place. It's not too big, it's not too small. It has this like the downtown core is really unique compared to a lot of other places that I've been because it still has that like Main Street kind of feel. There's a lot of local businesses owned by real human beings that are unique and weird and fun, and it's just a really welcoming place too. Um, I'm transgender, and I know there are a lot of places where I couldn't have opened a business the way I did, or I wouldn't feel as comfortable operating or being out. And Olympia is just really unique in that we're kind of everywhere here, and people don't. I get a lot of support for being open. Um, and visibility is really important to me because I didn't see people like me, like existing successfully when I was a kid, and I wish that I had. So I just don't think that there are other places. I don't know of any other places that I could do this in the way that I am, other than Olympia.
You do proudly fly the transgender flag outside your shop.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever had any problems operating downtown and being so visible?
Yeah, we really haven't had any like overt hate directed towards us. Um, there's the occasional like awkward comment or just kind of tone deaf or thoughtless thing. Um, a good example, I think, is all of the staff here. Um, on the name tags we have pronouns, and we occasionally get some like kind of thoughtless or stupid comments about that, but overall the community has been really supportive. And normally we fly the gay pride flag, the trans pride flag, and the like inclusive pride flag. But we don't keep them all up through the winter because it's wet and windy and they get kind of ratty. When we did first put them up, somebody pulled one down and it disappeared, but they didn't do any other damage, and I bought 2 of each, so it wasn't a problem.
Little combo pack.
Yeah.
How would you describe the general atmosphere downtown? I know that's something I've heard from a lot of people who do come downtown is safety. And I think the city has done surveys, and safety has been one of the biggest concerns. You operate downtown. What is that safety like?
I think that the safety in downtown it's a lot of perception, and I think a lot of it comes down to how big of a city you have really been in before, and what you can compare it to. And of course, it also comes down to personal comfort levels. I think a lot of people often feel uncomfortable downtown because they are confronted with things that are uncomfortable that they don't maybe see in their like rural neighborhood. You don't often see like encampments of houseless people in a rural neighborhood. But realistically, I don't think that downtown is particularly unsafe. I have been down here at literally all hours of the night, and I've never felt actually unsafe in downtown. I felt uncomfortable. I think that's real, and there can be uncomfortable or awkward situations, or there might be areas that I do go out of my way to like, I'm not going to walk down this alley tonight for whatever reason. But realistically, downtown Olympia is a pretty safe space to be. Yeah.
What has it been like from a business perspective, operating downtown? What are those aspects that are important to you as like a business? Is it like, what do you hear from your customers about the things that will get them down to the shop or will not?
Yes, that's a good question. People love to complain about parking. That's another one of those things that I think it really comes down to your perspective of if you've ever been in a bigger city. And it also has a lot to do with how much energy you put into trying to figure out parking, because it's not actually as bad as people think it is. But when you can't find your parking spot on the block that you're specifically trying to park on, I think a lot of people get stressed about it. So that is something we hear a lot, is that people are stressed about parking, or they had a hard time finding parking.
How many parking spots does your business have?
Oh, we don't have any of our own parking spot. On our website, and when we're doing workshops, we direct people to street parking or the parking in city-owned lots, which is free after 5. We do intentionally schedule events and our workshops either on weekends or after 5 p.m. so that people don't have to pay for parking or worry about parking.
And what other aspects, besides parking,
Yeah.
what other aspects of downtown are important to your customers?
Yeah. A lot of our customers do a lot of shopping downtown and have other favorite places they go. We do get people who come downtown specifically to come to the shop, and I try to make it a gateway experience for them and show them that that kind of perception of downtown being like dirty or unsafe is really not how it is here. Um, and even just getting them to like walk down the block to get a coffee or try, a new place for lunch or whatever can be really eye-opening because there's so much to do down here.
What improvements could maybe be made? What are you not seeing? What improvements could be made to downtown for you and for your business?
Yeah, so I know this is a tense subject, but we do need a parking garage, in my opinion. Um, I think that people get stressed because if they're unfamiliar with the parking infrastructure down here, they don't, when you're in that moment where you were hoping to park, on the block of the place that you're trying to go, you can't just whip your phone out and Google like City of Olympia parking. And I don't know about you, but I do not think of that kind of thing ahead of time mostly. So having something like a parking garage downtown that people know that they can go to, they know that they can park there, and that they're not going to have to like find parking, I think that really I think it eases a lot of the like anxiety that comes with parking and like driving in general, and can be really nice for people. So it's not that we don't have enough parking, it's that people don't know where to park, and that is stressful for people, especially people who don't come downtown very often. And we want to make it as stress-free and inviting as possible. So the problem isn't that we don't have enough parking, because we do. It's that people don't know where to park, and that causes anxiety and stress. And we want people who don't come downtown often or who have those, negative feelings about downtown for whatever reason. We want to make it as easy as possible for them to just come, park, and then spend time down here. So that's my pitch for the parking garage. And I know it's like kind of been in the works for a long time, but
I have asked the city about this.
yes.
What the city will say is, 'cause I think they've looked at it previously, like even at the full city council meeting, what I think they say is that it's too expensive. Like basically the cost of like cement and infrastructure and whatever else, building costs, to build a tall structure and then to maintain that structure over time are too expensive. But I do agree with you that I think that there does need to be easier wayfinding. I think that there need to be central locations where you do park. And so I do agree with you on that I do think that there needs to be some sort of better like central location.
Yeah. They have the property, and they've done I'm not going to go into my parking garage
Okay,
spiel.
tell me. Okay, maybe later. Off
Mostly
camera.
just because it's like long and not that exciting. But
Oh, for this project, that
That's
is the main.
very important,
That is the
yeah.
main topic of this project.
yeah, I know they were trying to bully Fed into turning that building that they own that's next to them on the corner of 4th and Capitol, I think, into a parking garage, and then they didn't want to for some reason. And then the parking lot behind like the Brotherhood and where the Indian restaurant is, that's the like theoretical location for a parking garage. And I know the city owns that property and owns the Ben Moore's and the I think it's called Great Indian Cuisine building, and that they've done a lot of the work to like plan that and already talked about all the problems with like there's a mural over there that is very beloved.
Yes,
They'll
the
have
Rafa
to-
mural.
Yeah, they'll have to figure out how to like I know some of the pieces are pretty movable because they were like glued up there. So hopefully that can be like moved semi-gracefully. But I know that it's like, I believe they have to wait until, at least until the leases on those 2 buildings run out before they could even consider building the garage. So I'm still cheering for it.
Besides parking, what about housing? What would you say to the idea of taking that city-owned parking lot and turning all of that into housing? Why do you want parking? Like, why not have like a built-in customer base of like 100 new apartments or 200 new apartments? Why is it parking?
That's a good question. I think for that specific lot, my understanding is that for a parking garage to be like well-designed space-wise, it needs to be that like double block length rather than a single. And I don't know of any other spots that could do that. So that would be why that specific spot. But just as far as like parking over housing, I think if we had that garage, there's a lot of other surface city lots that are currently like permitted lots that could then be turned into housing. It frees up a lot of space. It would kind of be detrimental to me in a way because I have a permit for the lot that's right across the street, and that's very convenient, but I would take the garage over that convenience because I think it would be more beneficial overall to customers and businesses. Just taking away that stressor for people and making it just as simple. I've really found that making things as absolutely simple for people as possible is the most ideal, like within my business and business communications, and for the stuff that I have done with the city and other organizations. Just, it doesn't matter how good your marketing is or your wayfinding is, like if you make it just deadly simple, it's just better overall. It's easier for everybody. The other thing is, why not more housing? Well, we've had a lot of apartment buildings go up that sit at less than full capacity as it is right now because of the affordability of them. So if the city were to, build low-income housing on that lot, I could see it being more beneficial overall to the city than a garage would. But from my understanding, the city doesn't, they don't build apartments, other developers do, and they want to make money. So it seems like it's been really difficult for the city to find developers who will do low-income housing. It seems like they've had some bait and switch propositions already happen, and it's tricky to get somebody to really invest in that low-income housing.
Right. I don't, just to be clear, I'm not asking you to speak for the city and for like
Totally.
city planners.
Yeah.
I just meant more for like if you're like, oh, people in the suburbs spend more, or like I don't know, like I don't know if that's correct, but I just was like thinking of like something more of like something like that. Like if you're like, oh yeah, people in the suburbs have more space for plants and
Totally.
thus they spend more money, or
I should probably be thinking about that aspect of it, but I'm a very bad capitalist, realistically. I do think that it is more widely appealing to like the greater Olympia and like Thurston County area than just housing would be. So I guess from that standpoint, it's good to bring everybody down here and not just our captive audience of who lives here.
Definitely. When you talk to your customers, do most of them come to your shop by car?
That's a really good question. I would say the great majority do come by car. We are very lucky to be literally across the street from the transit center and the bus station. And so we do get customers coming in off of the bus. We have lots of folks on bikes, and we have to get a little bit creative with how we wrap things or hand things to people for them to carry out, so that they're not trying to juggle 5 plants on the bus. But it definitely seems like a pretty high percentage of people are coming by car.
So you already kind of touched on this, but yeah, what other improvements would you like to see in downtown Olympia? Also, not just in the built infrastructure, but as a business. You know, taxes, tax incentives, you know, programs, Lavoli. Tell me what, like as a business owner, what improvements could be made in downtown to make your business as successful as possible?
Yes. So I think a lot of the improvements that could currently be made are around communication and outreach to business owners. Often we really don't know what's going on until it's happening. And in a lot of cases, emails do go out or social media posts might be made, but realistically, business owners, especially small business owners where you really have to be wearing so many hats, people don't always read their emails, especially if it's a kind of formulaic email from the city. And unfortunately, people are just so busy that trying to run their businesses and survive down here that a lot of those types of communication get missed. And the city used to have a employee who was essentially the small business liaison, and that position unfortunately got eliminated. I don't know what year, but shortly before my business opened. And there's just really a lot of missed opportunities, I think, in the city being able to connect more directly with business owners downtown. And we do have organizations like the Olympia Downtown Alliance, and we have the PBIA, which is an advisory board to the city made up of small business owners. I'm on the PBIA board now. As of this year, I'm the vice chair. Yes, the PBIA is the Parking and Business Improvement District Advisory Board, which is a board made up of small business owners in the downtown core who advise on how to utilize a tax fund that's collected from all of the businesses within that zone. And the PBIA has, within the last few years, struggled a little bit to really feel relevant and supported by the city. We recently became kind of rehoused under the Economic Development Department, and we're kind of revitalizing there, which is really nice. But we don't have a lot of good channels towards direct contact with the people who work for the city who are making decisions about downtown, or to city council. And a lot of business owners don't know that they can really just reach out and talk to those people. They don't know who to talk to necessarily. There's not much of there isn't really nobody gives you a packet when you open a business downtown and says, like, these are all the people you could talk to. These are all the organizations that, can support you. These are all your resources. That's one of the things we're trying to kind of address on the PBIA. The Olympia Downtown Alliance, the ODA, is also working to address that. And the ODA it's kind of the same thing as the PBIA, but instead of being under the city umbrella, is a nonprofit and a separate nonprofit organization, and is voluntary, so you have to buy into it rather than it being a tax district. And
If you don't mind me asking, how much does it cost to buy into the ODA?
it depends on the size of your business. I believe our membership is around $200 a year, which our PBIA tax is somewhere similar. I think it's a little bit less, but it's something like that. And those two organizations, and then on top of that, the city, really need to be working more actively together and really doing a lot more outreach and active communication with the businesses downtown. That's the biggest thing that we're all missing. There's a lot of, I'll pop into another business or a new business to introduce myself, and the business owner just hasn't ever heard of the ODA or the PBIA. They don't know who the mayor is or who their city council members are, and they feel very isolated. They have a lot of questions, or they will complain about something like parking, and I feel like sometimes I have to put my PBIA hat on and be like, well, let me tell you about parking, actually. Did you know that there's a website that shows you all of the places you can park and at what times? Did you know that there's an app you can use? You don't have to just keep paying tickets. And it's one of those things where it's like, this should be somebody's job.
So
Why
again,
don't we have that?
that business liaison, small business liaison position, like you said, that position maybe needs to come back.
I really think that it is essential to have somebody who is that, like, real point person who really knows everybody downtown, knows all the business owners, rather than just kind of leaving us to try to connect with each other. And it's really hard. I often don't get out and about downtown because I'm here. I'm busy during open hours. And I know that's the same for a lot of other business owners, where we just don't really get to patronize each other's businesses because we're busy running our own. And so having somebody who that's really their job and their focus is to connect us and bring our concerns to the right people or tell us who to talk to, it's really something that we're lacking right now.
Are there any improvements you'd like to see to the public transit in downtown?
In downtown specifically, I think buses need to run later and more often. And we had a big reduction during COVID for obvious COVID-related reasons, but it's been very slow to come back to even what it was before. And I know some of my employees rely on the bus system, and it's hard for me to schedule closing shifts when it's like, I gotta go so I can catch the last bus home. It's also tricky with the greater surrounding area. There are just a lot of places that the buses don't go. And like, I used to live out Black Lake Boulevard, and there's a certain point where you just have to have a car. because it's just too far and there's no bus system. There's no real safe way to bike because there's no shoulder on the road. And so you're just very limited. I think that there are a lot more people who would like to be able to use the bus system. And don't even get me started on the light rail. I have a lot of feelings about inner city transit choosing to not be a part of the link system when, even though it would have been I probably would have been dead by the time it made it to Olympia. I just think it's so vital for us to have that kind of connection to other cities if Olympia is going to be able to like grow and maintain the population and businesses, and having like a downtown core like this, we need density. And with, you know, a lot of people going back to work from home, it's a lot harder to maintain a city core like this without that something forcing that density. And I definitely worry that we're going to have a lot more parking and just visitor difficulties without more viable means of transportation for people.
What has your experience been like with the unhoused population in downtown Olympia?
Yeah, it's difficult in ways as a business owner. Nobody likes walking up to having a business is essentially like having a second home. I'm here more than I'm home sometimes, and nobody wants to walk up to their front door and find poop or needles or anything that is a biohazard. And there are other things like just garbage and messes and people, you know, freaking out, breaking windows, all of the things that come along with having a larger unhoused population. And there's also a lot of just empathy, that like sympathy and empathy fatigue over time, watching people struggle. There are people that I know by name who literally live on this block, and I watch them just not receive care. And it's really painful in a lot of situations because there just is a limit to our resources here. We have some really good resources, and that comes to a like kind of screeching halt when somebody is able to say no to those resources and for whatever reason doesn't want the help and isn't interested in changing their situation. And we just sit here and watch them suffer. And it's really difficult. I know a couple of employees at a neighbor business who ended up putting somebody up for a night in the middle of the winter because it was so cold, and they were worried they were going to come out to this person frozen to death on the stoop in the morning. And that's just not something that businesses or employees of businesses should be handling.
Right. In one of the wealthiest nations in the world,
Yes.
in a city that has services, it should not be left to small businesses to be the
Right.
caretakers of last resort.
Right. We also shouldn't be fielding things that are just completely outside of our skill sets. I feel like a lot of people expect us to be able to de-escalate like potentially violent situations without calling for any additional services, and especially without ever calling the police. I think a lot of people expect us to be doing some kind of mutual aid and participating to the largest extent we can in whatever mutual aid networks exist already here. I think people expect us to be able to offer up resources that whatever resources we have, things like bathrooms, and oftentimes just space. And I've watched a couple of businesses downtown try to do all of those things, and realistically, you can't be a successful business and also a successful aid organization when your business has absolutely nothing to do with that. And as somebody who really does give a shit about the people who are downtown, living down here, it's really difficult to be expected to just do everything for everybody. And knowing that I don't realistically have those resources to give people, especially consistently, and we do everything that we can to provide the things that we reasonably can, and we provide references to other resources. We keep an up-to-date list of public bathrooms and different aid resources on our community bulletin board, and we try to direct people where we can when we can, but it's difficult to be on the front line of a situation that you don't have the tools to handle.
So, the last question that I'll ask today is there anything that I did not ask about that you would like to talk about?
I think that it's really easy to talk about all the things that we don't have and talk about all of the things that have been difficult, but right now I feel very optimistic about downtown. I feel like a lot of the empty spaces are filling up. All of the empty spaces on our surrounding block are currently occupied. And there are 4 new businesses just in our little block area that are currently doing their build out and planning on opening in the next few months. And that's really exciting to see.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see new businesses opening and people still being interested and willing in investing their time and energy in downtown like this. And I do also see really positive changes with the city and with the ODA and the PBIA. And there are a lot of people who are really invested in this community, who really are putting in their energy and doing their best to improve Olympia and downtown. And I think that we do really have a fighting chance of continuing to be the cool, weird place that we are. I don't feel like downtown is dying or like looks bad or is a negative place in any way. I think it's a really cool, fun area to be, and it's really cool seeing so many new people moving here and new businesses opening.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a good note to leave on. So,
Yeah.
thank you so much for talking to me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks.